And this is Module 12, which is quantitative analysis for retailing, or retail quant. And even the quant that I have here is not very difficult. And it's quant that I think anybody can do, even those of you who are math phobic. And there's nobody that really is math challenged. I don't believe that, but there are a number of people that are math phobic, and you just fear it. And there's something wrong in the way we teach quant. Something wrong with it, especially to girls in our K through 12 system. It's very clear that there's something wrong in the way that we teach, particularly girls. If you go to other cultures, they don't have a problem. Chinese and Korean females, European females, they don't have this problem. I don't, whatever it is with the American problem, maybe it's the fear, the horrible fear that the smartest girls will never be voted on for cheerleader in high school. I'm not sure if that's it. I'm not really sure exactly what it is. It's just something that maybe we have done wrong in the teaching of math. But this is not really math. And even the math is not really what I want you to know. What I want you to know is to have an intuitive feel for some of the things that you need to know to be effective as a manager or executive in retailing. And there's something, we had a teaching seminar the semester before we developed it, and I'm a real live one for teaching seminars. I'll go to any teaching seminar anywhere if I think, and spend the whole day, 2 days, if I think I can pick up one or two things. One of the things that they talked about in this was what they call the parking lot test. And the parking lot test, what the parking lot test meant was that the students were learning a concept one day, and you were trying to teach them something. If they could not go out in the parking lot and explain to a colleague or friend in 1 minute what the concept meant, then what you didn't teach them right, or what they thought they learned was useless, or you as a professor have failed in your job. So I'm going to talk about a number of things. I'm going to talk about markup percentages and the different ways in which people talk about markup percentages. And I'm going to talk about other types of statistics: inventory turnover rate, average gross margin, and then the effect that putting stuff on sale has on margins. Because that's a decision that any retail entrepreneur, any manager, any executive, you need to understand that intuitively. In other words, you need to be able to go out and explain to somebody in the parking lot. You should be able to, when this course is over, go out in the parking lot and explain to somebody who doesn't know the effect that putting stuff on sale has on your margins, reducing the price in order to sell more quickly, the effect that has on margins and your profit margin. And so this is, if you're talking about markups, and I'm going to do that first, there are two different ways in which people talk about markup percentages. One is, and this is from the textbooks, I'm going to try to be consistent. I don't really like this terminology, but I'm going to try to be persistent. And one is MUPR. MUPR, markup is percent of retail, and it may help you as you're listening to this lecture to open up the homework. And on the first page of the homework, it's got all of these markup percentages. But markup is percentage of retail. To calculate that, you take the markup, and divide that by the retail price, which is another way of saying your profit divided by the retail price. That's MUPR. Now, the way you get your profit is you take what you sell it for minus the cost. So if you substitute in for that, you get the retail price, or P, minus the cost, what you paid for something, C, and then divide that by the price again. So it's P minus C over P. And of course, to convert that to a percentage, you need to, and I'll try to be very clear, when people talk about markup percentages, the answer's got to be a percentage. It cannot be 1 or 2 or 1/2. That's not the right answer, because even though technically 1 is the same thing as 100%, and 1/2 is the same thing as 50%. Don't want to teach you math. I want to teach you how to think and understand certain things that you need to know to be able to talk to people in the retail field, to be able to go out in the parking lot and explain it to people that are at a lower level than you. You know, if you're an executive and you're making a presentation and somebody says, can you explain, different people use different markup percentages, can you explain it to me? I would like for our students to be able to do that intuitively. Now, the second markup percentage way that people talk about markups is markup percentage, markup as a percentage of cost, MUPC, MUPC. So MUPR, and markup percentage of retail, in parentheses price, MUPC, markup as a percentage of cost. Now on this formula, what you do is you take your markup that you have and divide it by cost. Or if you substitute in, what the markup is, which is price minus cost, you have P minus C over C, and that equals MUPC. There's the ways in which people talk about these two things are different, and it's important that you understand which way they are. In a finance class, or if you're listening to an analyst briefing, if Kroger or Target or Walmart or one of the retailers here, Home Depot, Lowe's, whoever it is, they're giving out their financial statistics. They have to do it once a quarter. They release their financial results. They do it. They need to do it simultaneously on the internet as one of the rules of full disclosure, one of Levitt's excellent rules. And they will do it on a conference call on the internet. Different analysts can ask them questions. And in that type of situation, you'll hear them talk about average gross margins. Average gross margin is a percentage term that is the equivalent of MUPR. Average gross margin, and you'll hear people, it's gotten to be so common that analysts ask questions of CEOs and COOs, CFOs, what I was thinking about, not COOs, but to ask questions about these types of things, of the president, the CFO, those types of people, that they don't even say average gross margin, they just say margins. And everybody knows that when somebody has a question about margins, that they're talking about average gross margin. And average gross margin is something that's calculatable from the financial data that every company that's publicly traded has to publish. So any analyst, stock market analyst working for one of the big Wall Street firms that analyzes these different stocks in a particular category, makes predictions, any of them who passed the 3rd grade, like kind of Jethro and the Beverly Hillbillies that got to the 6th grade, somebody that's half as smart as that, as Jethro and the Beverly Hillbillies, can calculate this from the financial statistics, so everybody can see when average gross margin goes down. And I gave my students in the last year that I taught the class in public, I gave an example of Hot Topics, which had a period of about 3 years where every year their average gross margin went down. So average gross margin intuitively, if somebody asks you out in the parking lot, what is average gross margin? And you'd say, well, it's kind of the average markup as a percentage of retail over all the things that you bought and all the things that you sold. And of course that includes when you bought things and somebody stole them. It includes your shrink. It also includes things that maybe are not sold the normal way. For example, if you have you end up with stuff left over at the end of a season and sell it to a closeout retailer, a bulk at a loss, it includes that also. So the average gross margin kind of includes all the cost and then all the revenue. And then it figures the average that you made, your average MUPR, or I guess you would call it a weighted average MUPR, for everything that you sold for the whole company. And it's it's very, very good statistic for understanding how well a company is doing at the main thing in business. The main thing in business, which is buying something at one price and marking it up and selling it at another price. You may hear the term a return on investment, and that is when people say average gross margin, they're talking MUPR. When people start talking about return on investment, that's more MUPC talking, and particularly where you have kind of operations return on investment before overhead and all the other costs, what you were making on your return of your investment in your inventory. So that return on investment is what people are talking about when they say MUPC, and average gross margin is what we're talking about when they're talking about the MUPR, the average MUPR. So now the formula I want to ask you a question about return on investment, because that's calculated many different ways. There's just so many different ways. They even have something that you remember from finance class called EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, amortization, and depreciation, or something. Depreciation, amortization, something like that. EBITDA, which is your pure operational earnings, but actually includes the overhead, which we're not including in this type of situation. So we have average gross margin. You figure by taking your total sales minus your cost of goods sold and dividing that by total sales. So if a company has sales of $100 million and their cost of goods sold is $50 million, their average gross margin is 50%. That's pretty good. I was looking at some example companies. I know everybody knows what Kroger is, even the international students, because they don't have cars, and that's the only grocery store that they can, or probably one of the only grocery stores that they can walk to in the area. Kroger had the last financial statement that I saw. Remember, this is now in 2011. They have an average gross margin of about 21%. Winn-Dixie, which left this area, and Winn-Dixie's been shrinking all over the country for 20 years. I mean, pretty much steadily, there are fewer Winn-Dixie stores, gradually over the last, I don't know how many years. But Winn-Dixie's gross margin is in the 30s. Average gross margin is in the 30s. Target had, the last financial statement that I saw, they had an average gross margin right at 40%. Now, that's really excellent. That's a really excellent average gross margin for a retailer of that genre. And it's one of the reasons that they are able to pay their employees well, and their business model is very successful on its most important metric, average gross margin. Is, well, the most important metric we're going to come to in a minute. The second most important metric, I'll call it, although financial analysts might disagree and say it's the most important. Now, the final statistic I want to talk about is inventory turnover rate. Now, the other questions you're going to get are things that have to do with percentages and things like that. But inventory turnover rate is the number of times in a particular divided by the number of times divided by a length of time that your entire set of merchandise sells out. For most of y'all, you'll start off as store managers, or you'll work your way to store manager or general manager. Be your first big chance, the first time in which these financial statistics really come into play for you. And for you, that'll be the inventory. How many times on average the store that you manage, how many times they sell out in the course of a year. And you can think of it intuitively, and if this was the parking lot test, and you were trying to explain to, let's say, your assistant manager, what is inventory turnover rate exactly? Okay, it's the number of times a year we sell the entire store out. How many times a year we sell the entire store out? Now, the yearly figure, divided by the time period, in the United States, we seem to always use year as the length of time, which we divide the times per year. Like miles per gallon. In other countries, they don't use miles per gallon. They use miles per kilometer, or as their speed. We say 80 miles per hour. You can go 80 miles an hour on the interstate probably without getting a ticket most of the time. It's 128 kilometers per hour without getting a ticket. In other countries, they don't necessarily. It's not necessarily true that they're going to use year as a denominator. They might use another figure. I think it's because in the United States, business thought is so dominated by the financial people. And you can look on a financial report, of course, and find inventory for the year, the average inventory, and you can find sales for the year so easily that's why we use year. I'll give you some example statistics. The last statistic I saw, Kroger has an inventory turnover rate about 14.8. Grocery store I worked at in high school, Publix supermarkets in Florida, which is kind of the dominant supermarket chain in Florida. The only ones that can even come close to them are Walmart. The only company is Walmart. Only one is Walmart. And Publix has a 13.5. Walmart is in the high 8s. Last statistic I saw, 8.6, 8.8, something like that. Target's inventory turnover rate is 6. Surprisingly enough, last time I looked this up, Home Depot now has a better inventory turnover rate than Lowe's. Their inventory turnover rate is 4, and Lowe's is 3.6. A jewelry store might have an inventory turnover rate of 1/3 or 1/2, and that's why they have have to have such a big markup. It may take a typical jewelry store 2 or 3 years to sell their entire inventory one time. So an old style hardware store, the kind where they had aisles and aisles of like nails and screws and bolts and stuff like that, they have a very low inventory turnover rate. They do not have an inventory turnover rate of 3.6 or 4. Winn-Dixie has an inventory turnover rate of in the 7s. At the last stat that I saw, remember this is 2011 again, 7.6, 7.8, something like that was what Winn-Dixie had, which kind of tells you now, if you compare and talking about Winn-Dixie and Kroger, now Kroger has an inventory turnover rate of 14 point something, but they have a gross profit margin of only 21%, whereas Winn-Dixie has a gross profit margin above 30, but their inventory turnover rate is only 7.5. Now, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that Kroger is quicker to put stuff on sale and get rid of it. So Kroger probably, they're more quick, adept, agile about getting rid of old inventory. Something's not selling, they get rid of it. Put it on sale, half price, and get rid of it. And if you go in Kroger, you can see stuff like the organic juices, the stuff that costs like $6.99 for like 1 quart, that kind of stuff, that you can constantly see that stuff half off. And that's probably because, it won't sell at full price. They need to get rid of it. It's going to expire, whatever. They put it on sale and they get rid of it. So that shows you the different approach. Whereas Winn-Dixie, obviously, they have a higher gross margin, but they sell much more slowly. So it's pretty clear that that they're not going to put stuff on sale and get rid of it. They don't age their inventory. They don't practice the type of solutions where when something is not selling quickly, you get rid of it, or you put it on sale and get rid of it, and you'll take a cut in margins in order to get rid of that item, so maybe you can get something else in the store that will sell. Now, I'm going to go through a few problems, and there are examples of these type of problems on D2L. If you're taking this class, if you're not taking the class, you're just watching the video, these problems are a little bit too simple, honestly, and it's a little bit embarrassing that the simplicity of some of the problems. But that the purpose of this of these problems is not to have the students learn math or to practice the math they learned in the 3rd or 4th grade, whenever it was they first started taking algebra in the United States. I think it's the 4th grade, maybe the 5th grade, where you take algebra in most countries. I think in the United States it may be as late as the 6th or 7th grade that students take algebra. That's not the purpose. The purpose of it is to have the students reason, think through these things in their head. And so I'm going to go through some problems. I'm going to go through some problems for you and see if you can't do these problems in your head. Okay, now here's an item. Item A sells for $2,000. Your district manager tells you that item F is 80% profit as MUPR. In other words, it tells you that it has an MUPR of 80%. What is the cost of this product? Well, the answer now is $400. And the way you would get that is you'd set up the equation P minus C over P equals 0.8. P minus C over P equals 0.8. Now we know what cost is. We know what the price is. We know it's 2,000. So it's 2,000 minus C over 2,000 equals 0.8. So you multiply both sides of the equation by 2,000. See if you can't do that in your head. And you get 1,600. And then you subtract a negative P from both sides. So you have a negative C equals a negative 400 to multiply both sides of the equation by negative 1. Now see there, I just did it in my head. See if you can't do these problems in your head. On the exam, you'll be able to use a calculator. Item B retails for $4,800. Your district manager tells you that item G is marked up 20%. Markup is percentage of cost. What did item G cost? Now the answer before we start is $4,000. Now how we set it up? Okay, we know the price and we know the markup percentage, MUPC. What we don't know is the cost. So we end up 4,800 minus C over C equals 0.2. 20% as a number is 0.2. So we multiply both sides of the equation by C. So we end up with 4,800 minus C equals 0.2C. We add a C to both sides of the equation and we end up with 4,800 equals 1.2C. Divide both sides of the equation by 1.2, and y'all know 12 goes into 48 4 times. And so we end up with the cost of 4,000. Item C cost $1,200. It was marked up 300%. Markup is percentage of cost. And then it was placed on the shelf at that price. Later on, the store had a 1/2 off sale for this item C. What is the retail price of item C before it goes on sale? After it goes on sale, what is the price of it? What is the MUPC at the sale price? Well, if something costs, the price of something is what it costs plus our profit. If it costs $1,200 and we have a 300% markup, well then our cost is $1,200 and our profit is $3,600. You add those two together, you get the retail price of item H before it goes on sale, which is $4,800. After it goes on sale at 50% off, if something costs $4,800, after it goes on sale, it's going to sell for $2,400. What is the MUPC at the sale price? If it's $2,400, we have P minus C over C equals the MUPC. The price is $2,400, the cost is $1,200. Divided by the cost, we end up with 100% MUPC. I have worked in retailing, and I swear that this has happened many times. I'd have something that cost $100, and there'd be a sign saying it was 25% off. And somebody would ask me, well, how much am I going to have to pay for that? Those of y'all that are watching this from other countries may not believe this, but this happens quite often. I've had it happen with couples. Or something that cost, was 50% off. That's even easier. It's going to be half of whatever it is. If it's $500, it's 50% off, you're going to have to pay $250 for it. People would ask me, how much would I have to pay for it? We do have some students sometimes. Now, a couple things. Because this is not a math-oriented lecture, even though it sounds like it, it's a understanding-oriented lecture, understanding key things that you're going to need to know to be successful on the job. I'm going to want you to have the answer in the right terms. If I'm asking you for a markup percentage, I want the answer to be markup percentage of cost. I want you to say the markup percentage of cost is some sort of percent. I don't want you to say it's 2. I want you to say it's 200%. Because nobody says the markup as percentage of cost is 2. That doesn't make any sense. It's got to be in percentage terms. If I'm asking you for inventory turnover rate, I want you to tell me the number of times per year. If you're a foreign student, you want to say number of times per month, that's fine. The number of times per year that the store sells out. For Winn-Dixie, 7 point something times per year. Walmart, the high 8, 8.7, 8.8, north of 8.5, if I remember for 2011, the latest statistics, times per year that a Walmart store sells out its entire store. Kroger and Publix have inventory turnover rates of 13.5, 14.8, and 13.5 times a year, respectively, meaning that those stores, Kroger and Publix, sell out their entire store more often than once a month. If you go around and you look at a store, they sell that whole store out more often than once a month. Everything in that store sells, basically on average, more often than once a month. So times per year. There's two different ways of looking at inventory turnover rate. Financial analysts look at it as at the cost side. So they take cost of goods sold and they divide that by average inventory. And average inventory is calculated off the balance sheet, very simple, as very simply off the balance sheet as beginning inventory plus ending inventory divided by 2. Now, the managerial way to figure inventory is because if you're a manager, you should know the inventory of your store because basically the computer keeps the average inventory of the store is sales divided per year, divided by year, sales per year divided by the average inventory at retail price. And that's something that like the computer knows kind of over the course of a year what average inventory is. So if I told you that, for example, Target had an inventory rate of 6. And if on average, if the average Target store had $1 million in inventory at retail, then you would know that the average Target store had $6 million in sales. If I tell you that a company or a store, like I put you in a situation where you're a manager of a store, which is a very frequent thing throughout the course so far. You've had it in many other types of formulas and formats from, early modules on. And I put you in, and I told you that your store had sales of $6 million. And it had an average inventory of $1 million at retail. Then you would know that the inventory turnover rate is 6 times per year. So we will use, for the purpose of the exam, because this is a retailing class and I'm more interested in the management of retailing than I am in the financial thing, we will use the sales formula. And if I tell you any one of the 3 things, you ought to be able to figure out the other. If I tell you what sales is and what the inventory turnover rate is, then you should be able to tell you what average inventory. In fact, if you go to the store that you're going to be managing or go to the store you have now and you say, what were sales last year? And then you see some stats saying the sales were, $1 million and inventory turnover rate was 4, then you know your store carries $250,000 at retail of merchandise on average. If I tell you that the store has $250,000 in inventory at average, at retail on average, and its inventory turnover rate is 6, then you know that store had $1,500,000 in sales. So any of those 3 you'll have to do. For those of y'all, and I don't like this, I really hate it when students tell me they're math phobic because they're not. I mean, they're not good at math. There's no such thing as somebody being bad at math. As long as you don't have some sort of really some weird disease of the brain, everybody can do this. It's just some people have shut their brain down and become mentally lazy about doing these types of engaging their brain in this way. If, however, you're afraid of these questions and you want to make sure you do well, whether you think of yourself as good at math or think of yourself as poorly at math, work through the homework problems. I can send you very easily another set of homework problems. I'll be happy to do it. Now, I'm not going to grade it any differently. Don't ask me to send it unless you really need it. But I'll send you another set of homework problems, and you can work them. If you can work through the homework problems, you can do the problems on the exam. Good luck with Retail Quant. And that is Module 12, the last module for Test 3.